A few weeks ago, I made what I thought was a comprehensive list of new release books coming in 2024, and it turns out that I missed a bunch of massive name authors, and they don't come much bigger than Kazu Ishiguro. The Summer We Crossed Europe in the Rain, lyrics for Stacey Kent, is a graphic novel illustrated by Bianca Bagnarelli. Stacey Kent is a Grammy-nominated jazz singer, and Ishiguro wrote lyrics to 16 songs for her. The lyrics have been interpreted by Italian illustrator Bagnarelli. Meanwhile, Kent's husband, Jim Tomlinson, wrote music for these lyrics, while Kent performed these as songs. This is such a strange collaboration, really unique and different, and to be honest, I'm not sure what to think of this. You can hear some of Kent's performances on YouTube. She has an absolutely amazing voice. I'm not sure how this will translate into a graphic novel. It's just so strange and interesting and unusual, and I want to know more. This book comes out on the 5th of March. I've got 31 more books to tell you about in this video. I've saved an absolutely massive novel by one of the most beloved authors alive today until very last. I've got some big name authors. I've also got a few debut authors and other interesting sounding new books to talk about. But let's get back on with some of the big name authors. And Elif Shafak is another massive author. Coming on the 8th of August is There Are Rivers in the Sky. There Are Rivers in the Sky is a rich, sweeping novel set between the 19th century and modern times about love and loss, memory and erasure, hurt and healing, centered around 3 enchanting characters living on the banks of the River Time and the River Tigris. All their lives are curiously touched by the Epic of Gilgamesh. That description is a little bit too vague for me to go, yes, I definitely want to read that, except that it's written by Shafak, one of the best authors in the world right now, and I don't think she can write a bad novel at this stage in her career. Salman Rushdie has a memoir coming out on April 16th called Knife. This is a response to the attempt on his life in August 2022. Knife is a meditation on life, loss, and art. Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. Patel's last novel, Kayiki, was a retelling of the Ramayana, and this is a retelling of the Mahabharata, focusing on Ganga, the river goddess. Vaishnavi Patel has really twisted the popularity of feminist Greek myth retellings and started writing feminist Indian myth retellings. This comes out on the 28th of May. And So I Roar by Abi Dare. I love that title. And the author, Abi Dare, is enough to make this an instant buy for me. This is a novel about Tia, who overhears her terminally ill mother and auntie have a conversation about a secret her mother has been hiding for 20 years. Tia is helping Adani get an education and sheltering her from her village, when a knock on the front door means Tia needs to choose between protecting Adani and learning her mother's secret. Adani is the protagonist from Dare's last novel. It may be worth rereading The Girl with the Louding Voice before this book drops on the 6th of August. Safe Haven by Shankari Chandra. Chandra's last novel, Chai Time at Cinnamon Gardens, won the Miles Franklin last year, which is Australia's most prestigious literary award, and Safe Haven comes out on the 1st of May. After arriving in Australia as an asylum seeker, Finna dedicates herself to aiding those stuck in Port Camden, a remote outpost for asylum seekers, which clearly is not coded to be Manus Island at all. Finna is appalled by the mistreatment of those in custody there. After speaking to the media about appalling conditions, Finna is arrested and threatened with deportation. This is such a divisive issue in Australia, one that makes me personally furious. I mean, how many prime ministers in a row don't seem to think that asylum seekers are human beings, including the current wet squib weak man. Catherine Newman's new novel Sandwich comes out on the 18th of June. I thought Newman's last novel We All Want Impossible Things was fantastic. This is about a woman going through menopause who is trying to enjoy a nostalgic family holiday with her almost fully grown kids and her fully aged parents. There is something about a secret and a past, but really this sounds both similar enough to and completely different from her last novel to know that this is another character-first exploration of coming to terms with change. Promises to be another safe quality novel. The Amendment by Niamh Mulvey comes out on the 18th of April. Nell and her partner Adrienne are about to have a baby. For Adrienne, it is the start of a new life. For Nell, it is the reason the two of them are sitting in a therapist's office. Because she can't go into this without dealing with the truth that she has been a mother before. I have never got to Mulvey's first novel, Heart and Bones. Too many books, too little time. But this sounds like a fantastic opening premise for a novel. Coming sometime in March is Bruce Pascoe's new book, Black Duck. Pascoe is an author just about every Australian knows, bookish or not. For my Australian fans out there is an excellent documentary on SBS about Pascoe's last book, Dark Emu. If you watch patiently, you might just see Stella from 30 Books and another Aussie booktuber who you may be familiar with. Shameless plug aside, Black Duck is discussing a future Australia where we can reduce carbon emissions, preserve water, have truly unique cuisines, rebuild our soil and honour our relationship with nature, agriculture and forestry. It is a non-fiction about what we can learn from Indigenous practices. Gayl Jones has a new novel coming on the 20th of August called Unicorn Woman. This is about a black soldier who returns from fighting World War II to live in the Jim Crow South. As he roams around the South, he recalls his history in France and the love affairs he had, including to one woman he called the Unicorn Woman. I know Julia Armfield is super popular after her novel Our Wives Under the Sea. Her follow-up novel is called Private Rites and is released on the 11th of June. It is inspired by King Lear. It follows 3 women on a dying planet where it has been raining for so long the earth has changed. So too has the infrastructure and society. These women come together after the death of their architect father. Benjamin Myers is fast building a reputation, isn't he? His new novel Rare Singles comes out on the 1st of August. Dina lives with her useless husband and son, and she also loves Bucky Bronco, who had a string of hits in the late 1960s. Dina can't believe her luck when she finds Bucky online, and he agrees to perform a concert in Scarborough. Living in Chicago, Bucky is down on his luck after he lost his wife. Short of money, he has nothing to lose when he receives an email from a fan. Just sounds heartwarming and nice, that one, doesn't it? Indigenous Aussie author Anita Heiss has a new book out on the 30th of July called Dirrayawadha Rise Up. There isn't even a description of this book yet, but Heiss is an interesting author. She has moved from writing travel romance into literary fiction, and her last novel was one of my favourite reads in Australia, September. Another Aussie author with a book coming out that we know very little about, including its title, is Diana Reid's new novel, which is coming out in the later part of the year. That is vague, isn't it? Diana Reid is an author to watch out for. One amazing book, and one book I enjoyed but wasn't quite of the same quality. I will definitely read her third book, but I am hoping for a return to the quality we saw in Love and Virtue, which was incredible. On the 28th of February, Nam Lee's first book since his 2008 novel The Boat comes out. 36 Ways of Writing Vietnamese Poetry. This book has a list of very impressive endorsements, including by David Malouf, Nick Cave and J.M. Coetzee. A book-length poem that tackles identity, the violence of identity, racism, oppression and historical tragedy. Lee says that this is the book I had to write. This is the book I have been writing my entire life. Anton is probably best known as the translator of Korean books such as I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, Love in the Big City and Cursed Bunny. His debut English novel Towards Eternity arrives on the 9th of July and is about a world where technology and AI are overtaking biology and is questioning what our future will look like. Honeyeaters by Jessica Tu is published in July. All I can find about this is the month, the title, and that Allen and Unwin are publishing it. I think a lot of people will be interested in Tu after A Lonely Girl is a Dangerous Thing, which I recommend if you haven't already read it. What is interesting is she is publishing this as Jessica instead of Jessie, so I don't know if that is a typo or if this represents a change in direction. Hopefully some more information will be released soon. I thought Moses McKenzie's first novel, An Olive Grove in Ends, was nothing short of of brilliant and was completely unrecognised on BookTube. His second novel, Fast by the Horns, comes out on the 9th of May, so BookTube, you have 3 months to read his amazing first novel. In a tight-knit neighbourhood of St. Paul's, 14-year-old Jabari is proud of his position as the only son of a revered community leader, Raz Levy. Raised in a world of sus law and council neglect, Jabari finds hope in his Rastafarian faith, which offers the comforting vision that one day he and his fellow believers will repatriate to the motherland, where they will at last be free from oppression and prejudice. But in St. Paul's, a local firebrand activist has been arrested. The violence soon overflows, pulling both father and son into its maelstrom. As Jabari rages against the inequality, a chance encounter with a young black child gives him an opportunity for justice, or is it for revenge? Moving on to some general new releases from either debut authors or authors who I am unfamiliar with. On the 13th of August comes Scandalous Women, a novel of Jackie Collins and Jaqueline Susan by Gayl Paul. Jaqueline Susan is probably best known for a novel, The Valley of the Dolls, which is such an interesting and incredible novel, although has been overshadowed by the movie and Charles Manson and all that nasty stuff. The Valley of the Dolls at the time, much like Jackie Collins' work, caused a stir for discussing women and, wait for it, sex. You know, these people that don't think women are allowed to have sex, they also don't think that gay people are allowed to exist and think masturbation is a sin. No wonder they're so angry. This novel has been described as Mad Men meets the publishing world. The Husbands by Holly Gramazio is released on the 2nd of April. Lauren returns home one evening and is greeted by her husband Michael. The only issue is that she's not married. Her friends, photos and phone all say that she is indeed married. Then Michael goes to the attic to change a faulty light bulb, and when he returns, he's a completely new man, and Lauren's reality has shifted. Lauren soon realizes that her addict is supplying her with an endless stream of different husbands. These are her alternative paths. She has been given another chance to live them. So how do you know if you've taken the right path? And when do you stop trying to live a better life and just start trying to live? How about a Nigerian LGBT novel? Blessing by Chukwuebuka Iba is released on the 22nd of this month. When Obifana's father witnesses an intimate moment between his teenage son and his family's apprentice, who is newly arrived from a nearby village, he banishes Obifana to a Christian boarding school, marked by a strict hierarchy, routine, and devastating violence. Utterly alienated from the people he loves, Obifana begins a journey of self-discovery, while his mother grapples to hold onto her favourite son and her truest friend. What about some queer literary horror? It's set in Scotland. Fragile Animals by Genevieve Jaeger is released on the 25th of April. An ex-Catholic develops a sexual relationship with a vampire and is forced to deal with the traumas of her past and her role in ending the relationship her mother had with a priest. This is one of these books where if I was familiar with the author, I would know if I wanted to read it, but this screams very high ceiling, very low floor. So it's definitely one I'm watching and hope to see a few positive reviews from before I pick it up. My Brilliant Sister by Amy Brown has just been released. This is an Aussie book about Linda, the sister of Miles Franklin, who was known as Stella, by the way. The title is, of course, a reference to Franklin's autobiography, My Brilliant Career. Quiet, contained, conventional, Linda was an inversion of Stella, a family peacekeeper who married the man Stella would not and bore a son before dying of pneumonia at 25. This is two novellas blended together, and the second one is a modern-day timeline involving Ida and another woman named Stella. Ida is an author but had to put her writing career on hold while she teaches. Meanwhile, Stella is a singer-songwriter who has sacrificed everything for her career. This novel is an exploration of women and the balance between career and family lives. This next book, Jonathan Safran Foer thinks will make you cry. Anyone's Guest by August Thompson is released on the 9th of July. The blurb starts with the line, "It took 3 car crashes to kill Jake. Theron was there for the first 2. Theron is not there for the 3rd." Does that not make you interested in this novel? Theron loved Jake. They shared a love for metal and smoking weed. And I'm not sure if this is a friendship or a queer relationship, but regardless, books like this that talk about grief and loss, they excite me because I'm a little bit sick. And early reviews of this are very, very positive. I'm looking forward to that tearjerker. 1,000 Times by Asha Thankai is released on the 9th of July. Ayukta is sitting down with her wife, Nada, to respond to a question she's long avoided. Should they have a child? The decision is complicated by a secret her family has kept for centuries. The women in her family inherit a mysterious tapestry through which each generation can experience the memories of those who came before. Amla is a happy child in Karachi before migrating to Gujarat during partition. Ani fights for gender equality as she joins a student movement. Ayukta is battling with the question, what would it be like to share this gift with another person, and what would it be like to impart this burden upon them? Coming on the 25th of June is If You Go by Alice Robinson. When Esther wakes with a breathing tube down her throat, she has no idea where she is or how she got there. In terrible physical condition, Esther is tended to by Grace, the only other person in the building. In the half consciousness of her recovery, Esther is desperate to get back to her young kids and grapple with the events of her life as they come flooding back to her. A childhood spent between warring parents, the demise of her marriage, the struggles she faced when her children were born. Suspicious of Grace, Esther takes drastic actions to escape, but there are certain facts about the reality of her situation, her place in time, her history, and her life that she will need to uncover first. Winnie Dunn's debut novel, Dirt Poor Islanders, comes out on the 27th of March. Meadow Reid has grandparents from Great Britain, Australia, and Tonga. Despite being half white, everybody who raised her, everybody who has ever loved her, has been Tongan, and this is what makes her Tongan. This is a coming-of-age novel about a half-white, half-Tongan girl growing up in Western Sydney who is exploring the beauty of and at the same time pushing back against being a dirt-poor islander. Butter by Ascaro Yukuzi, translated by Polly Barton, is about a Japanese gourmet chef convicted of the serial killing of lonely Japanese businessmen whom she is said to have seduced with her home cooking. She refused to speak to the press until one day Rika writes to her asking her for the recipe for beef stew. The only woman in her office, Ritka begins to empathize with her serial killer pen pal and slowly changes after she cooks the recipes she is sent. Inspired by a real-life serial killer exploring obsession, romance, misogyny, and the transgressive pleasures of food, Butter comes out in March. Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle comes out on the 12th of March and is about 8 of the best teenage girl boxers fighting each other in a tournament, which is not a subject I see spoken about often or even at all. Violence is seldom explored where women and girls are the ones throwing the punches. There's Going to Be Trouble by Jen Silverman. That has a cover that screams revolution and read me. I love those red bed sheets becoming blood. Set in the best country to protest in, France, Miro is a small town teacher who, despite being raised to be apolitical, agrees to become the face of a student protest. Vandalism and death threats follow, and Miro flees to Paris, where she meets and falls in love with Charles, an activist. This wraps in with a second timeline set in 1968 involving a love story set around the Vietnam War draft, Harvard, and draft dodgers. Hagestone by Sinead Gleason comes out on the 11th of April. Nell lives on an island alongside this collection of women who manage to sound like a commune, a cult, and a covenant all at the same time, leaving me to ask which one is actually correct. One day they ask Nell to make a piece of art to help them celebrate their history, which leads Nell into self-exploration, the darker side of human nature, and the mysteries of faith. To be honest, that description isn't really selling it to me. But what is selling it to me is that Roddy Doyle, Elaine Feeney, and Louise Kennedy are among a collection of high-profile authors that have praised this novel. The Road to the Salt Sea by Samuel Kolawole is a Nigerian novel about a hotel worker, Abel God, which is an interesting name. Abel is delivering room service to one of the hotel guests, who happens to be a sex worker working for a very powerful person. Abel somehow finds himself caught up in the sex worker's world and must run to the desert to save his life, where he meets drug-addled migrants, a religious leader called Ben 10, which isn't that a kid's show? Dreaming of travelling to Europe for a better life, they fall victim to human trafficking, face starvation, and a fight for their freedom, dealing with family failure, faith, and the Nigerian class system. To be honest, this book sounds like a little bit of an ambitious mess, but it's one of those novels where if it pulls it all off, it will be absolutely incredible. And good, bad, or otherwise, I'm going to read this one. It's coming on July 2nd. I'm going to finish with a huge one, but one that needs to be taken with a rather large grain of salt. On the 13th of November 2025, that's right, I said 2025, we're talking nearly 2 years away, Vikram Seth, A Suitable Girl, is due to be released. Considering that this release will be 12 years after its initial deadline, and that Seth has missed at least 2 further deadlines from this, nothing can be taken as gospel at this stage. But if true, this will be one of the biggest and most anticipated releases of the decade. But, you know, precautionary tale about a young shepherd who yells wolf. I'd like to say a big thank you to my wonderful Patreons for all their support. If you'd like to read books with us, link is in the show notes. I really hope that you found something that sounds like it's your sort of book. But if that isn't enough for you, why don't you click on this video here where I talk about 76 other literary fiction novels coming in 2024, or just go to the description, I've put a link in there. Bye bye.